All right, Strength Faction. So we're actually getting into the real X's and O's of program design now, which is the third step in our five of this whole process. But before we jump into everything, let's keep in mind, I know, and we talk about this every single time, but the three goals over the lifetime of our clients, because this is going to be pertinent again here as we work through all this. Number one, we want to set up things in a way that creates consistency or allows consistency for our clients. So when it comes to the actual program design, that means writing programs that don't overwhelm them and make them feel like, oh my God, I'll never be able to learn all this. I'll never be able to do this. They wind up feeling silly. Next thing you know, they're not coming into the gym. Crush goals and have fun doing it. I think it kind of goes without saying, but if we're writing programs that aren't actually helping people get to their goals, what are we really doing? And as much as that sounds ridiculous, I can definitely think back on times in my career where I wasn't sure that the programs that I was writing were actually going to get people to their goals, right? It can be real confusing. You're like, oh, everything's really just about diet. But is that true? Right? So we got to think through some stuff there. And then have fun doing it really goes back to, I think, writing appropriate programs. It's never fun to feel like an idiot whenever we're trying to do something. So really, it's just about, from the actual program design standpoint, making sure that we're writing something that's approachable for them. And the rest of it really is about the culture and the actual environment in your gym. And then, again, competency and independence. What we do with our programming should layer competency, right? Which we should start with things that they can actually do from day one, providing appropriate challenge that gets them to grow in a multitude of ways based on really their goals, and eventually leads towards the point where they gain their independence. And again, that doesn't mean that they're going to leave our gym. We have clients who are going on, I don't know, 8, even into their ninth year now of training with us. And at this point, it's really not that they need us. It's that we feed into their consistency. We help them to continually crush their goals and have fun doing it, which we'll talk about things in a few weeks of how we help to continually keep their goals as they evolve top of mind so that we're always all on the same page, because that's probably the biggest challenge when someone's been with you that long. But they're not going to leave your gym. They're not going to leave your gym once they become confident and independent. Some might, and that's okay. That's all right. And they're going to say good things about you. So here's what our programming sheet looks like. It looks a whole lot like the Strength Faction program, right? The difference is it's going to be more individualized now, where the Strength Faction program is a group program. This is going to be all about the individual. So we've got this person's name at the top, Karen Jones here. We've got highlighted what block and phase she's on. We've got her goals in her exact words written in there. And then her FMS concerns are on here, right? So she's shoulder mobility, trunk stability push-up, deep squat, and then any other concerns that we have about anything. This is where you do want to be a little bit careful. This is an older program, and we have a lot of stuff written in here. Today, oftentimes we will write things like see client folder for full details. You just want to be careful that you're not throwing things that may get you in trouble from a HIPAA perspective onto their sheet, and then it's laying around on the gym floor. People don't need to know that this person, not that she does, that this person has an eating disorder, or that they struggle with depression, or whatever things they may have told you that you want to keep top of mind. There are certain things that should stay inside the client folder. So within reason, any other concerns you have about the person. Our rule of thumb is that if it actually impacts training. So if you look at hers, I wouldn't say there's anything on here that's concerning in terms of it shouldn't be on the sheet. Right shoulder tendonitis and knee pain. She had right knee surgery 8 years ago, still feels it running, landing the wrong way, stairs, reverse lunges, and contact on hard floors. So all things that we should keep top of mind when it comes to programming. The only one that could potentially be questionable, but I don't see an issue with necessarily. I would talk to the client, make sure they're okay with it, but has MS. It's a big part of the reason we're training, to stay strong and put off the impact for as long as possible. And then below that, we've got our exercise key, which you guys are all familiar with, especially if you've been working through the Strength Faction program, but basically tells them, based on the session number that they're on, what workout they're on. And just like strength action, it's kind of redundant, but the same information is here in multiple forms. So one, every single session is numbered. Every single week is organized by color, that blue, pink, green, purple, lavender maybe. And they also have a letter number. So as we go down here and look at the whole thing, you'll see that we have workout A says 1/3 in that first blue column because that's the first and the third workout. Big difference between this and the strength action program is that pretty much everybody when they start at our gym has an A workout and a B workout, whereas strength action is A, B, C, D, E, right? Sometimes even F, depending on the time of the year. So they have an A and a B workout. If they're training 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example, they're going to go workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, workout A on Friday. So that would be session 1, 2, 3, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If they were training 2 days a week, let's say Tuesday, Thursday, for example, they would do workout A, session 1 on Tuesday, workout B, session 2 on Thursday. Then the following week, they would still be workout A, session 3, still in the blue column for Tuesday, before they would finally go on to the pink column. So if they're training 3 days a week, it's going to take them 4 weeks to get through this program. If they are training 2 days a week, it's going to take them 6 weeks to get through this program. Other than that, I mean, everything really that they need to be able to execute this program outside of coaching is written right on to the sheet. So we've got the exercise names off to the left. We have things paired, just like in the strength action program. A1, A2, A3 also happen to all be on like a darker gray background color because that's going to be a tri-set. They have 2 to 3 rounds, how many reps they have. Then they would go on to their Bs. Goblet squat, inverted row, Gandalf shoulder cars, also done as a tri-set for 3 rounds in week 1. Then assistance, standing handcuff hinge, farmer carry, before they would go to their conditioning with battling ropes in this example. And workout B would be complementary. So really, what those things are is power. Not everything there is power, but the primary thing in our first kind of circuit of the day, that tri-set, is power. That'd be that med ball slam. But then rather than just resting and wasting our time, we're going to do plank and mobility based on their FMS there. Now, one question that we do sometimes get is, well, why do you do core before you go do their big lifts? Aren't you pre-fatiguing their core and potentially setting someone up for injury? And the short answer is nope, absolutely not. The slightly longer answer is that we're not remotely taking our core training towards anything that's going to bring us close to failure and fatigue to a level that's going to detract from our safety when we do our bigger lifts. The big thing with our core training is that we are reinforcing tall and tight postures, and you can almost view it more so as, even though I kind of hate this word, but I think it will resonate with some of you, is you can almost view it more so as like activation type training. It's just kind of getting things fired up. It's really getting our central nervous system, everything prepared for the work ahead, not detracting from the work ahead. We're not trying to kill ourselves with our core training. And then we get into our strength, our main lifts for the day. After that, we get into our assistance, which for us is just like those secondary lifts, typically single arm, single leg, not always, as you can see here, but it would be that other work where oftentimes if I say there's this exercise and there's this exercise, which one would you consider primary strength? Goes in strength 9 times out of 10. Which one would you consider to be more of like an ancillary, auxiliary lift? It's like, okay, we call that assistance. That's not to say that you couldn't have big compound movements as your assistance as well. There's always an it depends to this stuff. And then after that, conditioning. And the other day is complementary to that. So whereas workout A was goblet squat and inverted row as our primary strength movements, you can see that workout B was deadlift and push-up as our primary strength movement. So workout A was a hinge was a squat and a row. Workout B was a hinge and a press, right? And then assistance would kind of balance everything out. At the very bottom here, we have our cool down that we're done before we head out of the gym. And that pretty much does it. So as we jump in here, I was about to say if you don't take anything else away from this than this, but that's not good. Don't do that. Don't just take this. But this is one thing that you should absolutely screenshot, print out, do whatever you need to do to keep this top of mind, because this is our program design checklist. If you have the information that you need to either straight up fill in whatever it is that it's asking you, or you have the information that will allow you to kind of like stream out the thought process to get the thing done, then you're in a good place. Now you just need to understand our system and take what you need to update yours to save yourself a ton of time. So this is our checklist. Client name, who does this person remind me of? What are their goals? What reps are we going to use for the block for power, strength, and assistance? What are their FMS and assessment notes? Any other concerns or notes we need to be aware of? How many days are they going to be training each week? We have to keep the neural metabolic continuum in mind. What movements we're going to be using, how many sets we're going to be doing, what loading types we're going to use. You'll learn what that is a little bit later. RPE, rating of perceived exertion, conditioning, and their cooldown. All right, so how does this information from the checklist impact and go into the program? Well, real quick, you might be asking, where did this come from? And if you go back to the previous presentation on our one-on-one assessment and goal setting session, and the one on our personal orientation session, that's where all of this information comes from. So every single thing that you see here has either come from us interviewing that client, FMSing them, or walking them through things in our personal orientation session. So if you haven't implemented those things, I'm not saying you have to. I'm never going to tell you what you have to do, but it will help greatly in your being able to identify and answer these things, okay? So how does this stuff impact the program? Well, let's start with, who do you remind me of? Okay. My goal, and this is something that if someone told me back in 2004, 2005, especially when I was really getting rolling, but I started doing training in 2004, training people in 2004, but especially in 2005, I thought everybody needed an individualized approach. There can be nothing the same between people. These people deserve my full thought process and every single thing. And they do. It's just that people aren't that different. So my goal is to use a program that I have to make very few changes on, none even, if possible. Obviously, if you're newer and you don't have a big Rolodex of clients and a vast history of training programs that you've written, that might be a little harder to do. But once you've written one program, especially like if you decide to take the style that we're introducing, that program can be your template going forward. We've done almost every single semester of Strength Faction when we're introducing program design, and we say to people, like, how many of you are starting with a blank sheet, like on a Q&A, like raise your hand on one of the coaching calls, raise your hand. And it never fails. There's multiple people. And that's cool if it's working for you. But if you're finding that you're taking a ton of time to do it, you stress over minutia, and I could say it again, spending too much time doing this stuff, giving up your weekends and your evenings and your early mornings to continually write programs from scratch, you don't need to do that. Not only do you not need to, we've gotten better results by working off of proven programs that we've already written and modifying them as little as needed. And as little as needed doesn't mean lazy. It's just like, what's the minimum dose of Advil I need to take to get rid of my headache? It's the same thing when I'm saying as few changes as possible to make this program appropriate for the person. So when someone comes in, I'm meeting with them, I'm hearing their goals, I see their FMS, we go through their personal orientation, and I'm thinking, okay, who does this person remind me of? Whose program am I going to work off of to get them rolling? And then, another little liberating truth is like, sure, we've trained hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people in our gym, but we don't go back to people from even 2017 and use their program as a template, because we're constantly upgrading things. We're typically going to open one of the last half dozen programs of someone new in the gym that we've written and work off of that. So you don't need a ton of programs to make this happen. And if I simplify even further, we probably have one of three templates that we commonly go to for our clients. And it would be like power, strength, and conditioning. This person doesn't have assistance because we don't want to overwhelm them from day one. Maybe someone's coming in with a little more experience, so they have a template that would have power, strength, assistance, and conditioning. And the third one would be power, strength, and assistance, no conditioning, right? those are our most common 3 go-to templates from day one, and it would just depend on, you know, what the person's goals are, what their background is as to what we would choose. Not saying those are the only ones, but those are our most common 3. All right, so super duper efficiency tip. You're going to see these pop up throughout. These are things that, in my opinion, you should absolutely do. So you should have every program that you've ever written readily available, and we use Dropbox to accomplish this. I like Dropbox because I can just open it. I can search by exercise name. I could search by member name, you know, whatever, and I can easily find and retrieve things. I have the app on my phone. If someone's, you know, on vacation, they're like, hey, like, I have a pretty well-stocked hotel gym here. Can you send me my program? I can open it in Dropbox, screenshot it, and text them a picture. I don't even have to like send them the file and they need to go get their email. Like, boom, here you go. A million reasons why Dropbox is really convenient, but what we're really talking about here is that I can open Dropbox and work off of any previous client's program incredibly easily. So when we get a new client, we're just going to change this top section to the new person's information. We're going to open someone else's program, whoever they remind us of. We're going to change the name. We're going to change their goals. We're going to input their FMS information, update any pertinent notes, and double check if we're happy with the reps for power, strength, and assistance across the block. Okay, then we're going to work our way down. But today, we're really going to dig into deciding on the reps for power, strength, and assistance for the client's first 4 programs. That's a block, okay? And that's what we have highlighted here at the top. So here we see Karen Jones, block 1. So this means this is her first block ever with us, okay? Phase 1. The first phase is highlighted. There are 4 phases to a block. So I know I said this earlier, but if she trains 3 days a week, she will, and consistently, she will get through each phase in 4 weeks, which means it will take her 16 weeks to get all the way through this block. So that's about 4 months. If she trains 2 days a week, it will take her 6 weeks to get through each phase, 24 weeks to get through the block. That's about 6 months. So it takes someone 4 to 6 months to get through this whole entire process. Let's dig in and see what I'm really talking about. But keep this in mind. This is, in my opinion, the simplest definition of everything that we're going to do when it comes to program design is about intent. We always have to have an intent in mind. Our intention of why we're applying a given exercise, our intention of why we're giving a certain rep range. And if you don't have to, I'm never going to do this to you, but if I were to look over your shoulder while you're writing a program and I were to say, hey, like, well, what's your intention with that? If you have a solid answer, then not to say anything goes, but if it's based on solid intent, it's probably gonna be a good thing. And then let's talk about RPE. I know we've talked about this with the actual training program, but there's a number of different approaches out there to RPE, and this is one thing that we really had to simplify in our facility. So here goes. It's a rating of 1 to 10. Intent matters. So power versus strength versus conditioning. What I'm really talking about is, number 1, let's go back to the 1 to 10. So 1 would mean absolutely no effort at all. I don't even know what that would be. It's never going to be on one of our training programs. A 10 would mean absolute maximum effort. We could not repeat that again. And it's before technical failure. So it's a 10 would mean that is the last rep that we could possibly do. So say that it was, 5 reps at an RPE of 10. That 5th rep is the last one that we could do with good form. If we did just one more rep, our form would begin to break down. That's what we're talking about, is technical failure. Okay, so if I were to say, and also we're never really going to write 10s. I couldn't tell you, I don't think, early on in my career I made the mistake of giving people a 10 at times in training, but we should never really have a 10 in training. So let's use the example of, let's talk about a few more. A 7, whenever it comes to, let's go strength. A 7 would mean that we have 3 quality reps left in the tank. An 8 would mean that we have 2 quality reps left in the tank. A 9 would mean that we have 1 quality rep left in the tank. A 10 would mean 0 quality reps left in the tank. Once we get below 7, 6 would mean that we can make that implement move very fast with moderate effort. A 5 would mean very fast, snappy with minimal effort. And that's really the extent of what we use. I couldn't tell you, I don't think, that I've ever used a 4 or below. So that's going to be for our strength work. For power, we have to think about our intention. Our intention for strength was really getting the lift done, right? For power, our intent is velocity, height, whatever. It's explosive, it's snappy all throughout. So for this, we could still have, we said an RPE 7 for strength would mean that we had 3 quality reps left in the tank. And that quality that we're after is completing the exercise with good form, incrementally adding more weight, right? Well, what's the quality that we're after when it comes to power? Velocity, right? So it would mean, a 7 would mean that we have 3 quality reps left in the tank. But now, again, that quality, that intent is velocity. So if our velocity starts to drop off before that point, then we've picked a weight that is too heavy. So we should have 3 reps left in the tank at that same velocity for a 7, 2 for an 8, 1 for a 9. Now, one time when I was presenting somewhere, to be honest with you, I don't remember where, someone asked me, like, that's all really confusing. What do you think if I were to change the RPE column on my programs and call it like quality reps left in the tank or reps left in tank, and just write that number? I'm like, honestly, that sounds like a great idea. It's just that we've been doing it this way so long, and it's kind of an industry accepted term. But I dig it. So honestly, if that resonates with you as well, there's nothing that says you have to use the term RPE. You could just write QRLIT, quality reps left in tank, and then write the number of reps you want them to have left, whatever. And then for conditioning, it's more going to be about perceived effort. It's not typically a, getting the weight lifted. It's not necessarily a velocity thing. It's a perceived effort, which is going to be a whole lot more subjective than the objectivity of power and strength. Okay. And then what about body weight? I used to not put RPEs on body weight at all, but I do now, and have been for quite a while. And really, it's just, think about it. Depending on what we're doing, the intention is more than likely strength, but it could also be jumping. It could be velocity, height, what have you, power. So the same exact things would still come into play. Let's say it was strength and we were doing an inverted row, and we would have that person set up at a lower or a higher angle so that they could accomplish the reps that are prescribed and still have the number of quality reps left in the tank based on their RPE. So hopefully that makes sense. We do use RPE for body weight movements, not always for things like core. That's kind of, and it depends, but again, it just comes back to intention. All right, so let's talk about power. Well, here's what I learned in college. Power is precisely defined as the time rate of doing work, where work is the product of the force exerted on an object and the distance the object moves in the direction in which the force is exerted. What? Okay. And that's from the Essentials of Strength Training and Conditioning, 2nd edition. That's all well and good. But here's what I really want you to think about. This doesn't make us think intention. Precisely defines the time rate of doing work, where work is the product of the force exerted on an object. Yeah, okay. The big thing is, what's the intent? Well, the intent is to be explosive with our movement whenever it comes to power training. So don't say this to your clients. Say this to your clients. Put a hole in the wall with our medicine ball throw. Fly through the ceiling when we jump, right? Set the intention, not the, well, we're going to put force into the object and whatever. So what exercises would you use for power? I'm going to take a sip of my coffee while you think about that. Think about it, really. Say it in your head. Maybe say it out loud. If you're in a coffee shop, don't do that maybe. All right, so hopefully you've thought of some different power exercises that you would commonly use. You could have cheated and looked at the strength action programs and see things that we're doing. Here's a whole bunch. Medicine ball throws and slams, landing and jumps, Indian clubs. That one might confuse you, but there's some pretty cool Indian club drills that you can do for power. Kettlebell ballistics, sandbag ballistics, sprints, loaded and unloaded. When I say loaded, I'm not talking about running with a parachute or anything. I'm talking about like sled work. Ski erg sprints, airdyne bike sprints, rower sprints, speed lifts, agility work. People commonly ask whenever I present, like, oh, Olympic lifts, aren't they for power? Sure, it's just that we don't really do them in our facility outside of maybe right now 1, maybe 2 clients who do like some variations of hang power cleans, hang power snatches, things like that. But those are so far and few between, I don't even really have it on here. Reps for power. Here's what I learned in college. 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps at 75 to 85% of 1 rep max for multiple effort event. 1 to 2 reps at 80 to 90% of 1 rep max for single effort event. Okay, cool. So 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps at 75 to 85% 1 rep max. All right. Medicine ball throw. All right. What's their 1 RM? Do you have their 1 RM for their med ball throw? All right. So we can't do med ball throws. Landing and jumps. What's their 1 RM on a jump? Don't know that either. Crap. All right. Well, we can keep going. It's fine. We'll be all right. Kettlebell ballistics. Kettlebell swing. What's their 1 RM? Shit. Okay. You see my point. This is all well and good. It's just that the crap that we learn in college, it's not all crap. It's a good lens to have. We can still understand intention when we look at this. But this stuff's not applicable. And this is what annoyed the crap out of me when I was in college. And this is what annoyed the crap out of me back in whatever it was, 2012, where I was stressed out and overthinking every single thing whenever it came to program design, is that all of this stuff is designed for weightlifters and athletes who are given these very prescriptive programs. And I'm like, well, shit, like I train real everyday people with real lives, and I'm not about to have them come in the gym and do 1 RM testing on their strength work. And I can't even do 1 RM testing on pretty much any of this stuff. So what gives? Well, what gives is that this is not really going to be helpful. We think about the intention. Let's go back for 1 second. And the intention really is 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps at 75 to 85% of 1 rep max for multiple effort events. It means that it's heavy-ish, right? 75 to 85% 1 rep max. It's heavy-ish. It's not maximal loads. So, all right, their intention is that you can move things still pretty fast in those loads, right? 1 to 2 reps at 80 to 90% 1 rep max for single effort event. Okay, if our reps go higher, or if our weight goes higher, our reps got to come down so that we can still be explosive with those movements. Okay, I get that intention. So, with that in mind, reps for power. How many reps would you program for power work? Think about it. I'm taking another sip of my coffee. How many reps would you program for power work? There's no right or wrong answer here. Maybe you should think like, all right, what's the maximum number of reps I'd program for power? 100? Probably not. 50? Probably not. We're really getting into endurance here. What's the maximum that you would do? What's the minimum that you would program for power? Especially think about like context is important. Who's your audience, right? What rating of perceived exertion? Well, we kind of talked about that. It's sort of the same across the board, somewhere between 6 and 9. And for us, 9 would be incredibly rare. Here's our most common. Most commonly used somewhere between 2 to 8 repetitions at an RPE of 5 to 7 because intent. Does that mean that if I put 3 sets of 10 kettlebell swing in someone's power, that would be wrong? No. If that person has the requisite skills and strength and conditioning to be able to keep their velocity up for those 10 reps, and there was a reason why I wanted to do that, sure. If I wanted to give someone a hang power clean at an RPE of 8, again, that's going to be very far and few between in our facility. That would mean that they have 2 quality reps left in the tank. Would that qualify as power? Absolutely would. This is not a rule. This is me saying most of our training is going to happen between 2 to 8 reps at an RPE of 5 to 7. Keyword being our training. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, okay? But you should have an intention on this stuff. And we found this to work pretty well. So I don't know, maybe steal it. This is where it's going to go. And like I talked about, we're going to put in our power exercise. Then we're going to pair that with some core training. And we're going to take that straight into some mobility training based on their FMS. And we're going to circuit that. When do we rest when it comes to power? Well, we don't really need to. It's kind of all built into the program. They're going to do, say this was a medicine ball throw variation. They're going to do their 5 reps. They're going to leisurely stroll on over to whatever their core thing is that they're doing. That could just mean they're going to leisurely get down to the floor, do their plank, whatever, hold it for 30 seconds. And then let's say they had rib grab T-spine rotation. They're going to roll onto their side, knock out their 3 to 5 breaths on the one side, roll over, 3 to 5 breaths on the other side, get back up, and they're back to their power training. 9 times out of 10, people in our facility are going to be moving, but at a relatively casual pace the entire time when they're in this A1, A2, A3 Then they'll take a break before they go on to B1, B2, B3, which we're going to talk about next. That would be strength. Okay? So, strength. For us, we really just say, I should have asked you. My gosh. How would you define strength? For us, it's the intent to incrementally add weight to compound movements, right? Get stronger. Incrementally add more weight. Pretty self-explanatory. So what exercises would you use for strength? Take some. You're probably saying the big ones, right? Squats, deadlifts, presses, rows, pull-ups, loaded, unloaded. Typically heavier bilateral lifts, but unilateral work can have a place here too. Could I get someone stronger with pretty much any lift? Yeah. But the big thing is big bang for our buck lifts. I could have very easily thrown in, like it says, unilateral work can have a place here too. Very easily could throw in split squats, rear foot elevated split squats, single arm presses, single arm overhead press, heavy single arm dumbbell rows. There's a million variations that I could have thrown in, but intent, right? Intent. Reps for strength. According to the NSCA, 2 to 6 sets of 6 or fewer reps at 85% of 1 rep max or greater. Okay. Keeping in mind that we train general population people, completely normal people, and we don't test them, it's kind of hard for me to know what their 1 rep max is on any of this stuff because I can't imagine Mr. or Mrs. Jones coming into my gym for their assessment after they got done with a long, hard day of work and they're nervous about everything. And I'm like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to load you up on your squat. We're going to see what you got today. We're never going to do that. And we really, outside of a fun event that we do every July where we give our clients an opportunity to come in and actually max out, we never have our clients max out. So I can again look at this and understand the intention. Okay, 85% of 1 rep max or greater. Okay, so that's pretty heavy. 2 to 6 sets of 6 or fewer reps. All right, that's what they say. What do you say? If I want to get someone stronger, am I limited to 6 reps? I don't think so. How many reps would you program for strength work? What's the most reps that you would give someone if you're trying to get them stronger? What's the least amount of reps that you would give someone if you're trying to get them stronger? At what rating of perceived exertion? For us, 2 to 10 reps. Yes, sometimes we even do up to 12 reps for strength work at an RPE of 7 to 9 because intent. If we start getting down to a 6, we're really getting more into like the velocity and power side of things. And if we're getting above a 9, it's just the cost of doing business is typically way too high. And by typically, I mean always. And really, even a 9, I would say, is typically too high. If I were to narrow this down a little bit more, I would say 2 to 10 reps at an RPE of 7 to 8. Occasionally a 9. Goes here. And as you can see, once again, rather than doing a strength movement and resting, we're pairing non-competitive exercises. And we're going to get more into this when we actually talk about exercise prescription, for lack of better terms. But lower push is paired with upper pull. So lower push, upper pull. And then rather than rest, we're going to do a motor control drill. So look at the Strength Faction program. It's a pretty good representation of this. And then most, depending on when you're looking at this, most of the time it is. There are times where we do like upper body, lower body days, but those are far and few between. And then strength. And then workout B would be the opposite. If it was lower push, upper pull in workout A, it's going to be lower pull, upper push in workout B, or vice versa. We don't always start with lower push and upper pull. That could also have easily been lower pull, upper push. But the big thing is that the week balances itself out, and we've covered full body training with our strength across the 2 days. Okay? Same thing. I started to say it, but with rest, we just moved through this again at a casual pace. Lower push, sure, maybe we shake things out for 30 seconds or so, then we go do, whatever our upper pull is, shake things out for 15, 20, 25 seconds, 30 seconds, and then we go to our motor control drill, shake things out, casually stroll back on over to our lower push. Boom, we've completed 1 round. We're at the start of round number 2. They're moving pretty much continuously at a casual pace. And then we get into our assistance work. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are kind of our 3 big templates that we commonly use when people sign up. This is 9 times out of 10 going to be the one that we're going to skip with a lot of people from day 1. And here's why. Let's go back to this program. This person is brand new, they're green to training, or they just haven't had big success at other places in the past from feeling overwhelmed. Now, they're going to come in, and sure, they've done a personal orientation, so they know some stuff here, but they're going to learn the power movement, they're going to learn their core movement, they're going to learn this mobility drill, they're going to do that 2 to 3 times. Between the learning and the doing, they're probably starting to feel it a little bit. Then they're going to learn or be reintroduced to, because they did it in their personal orientation, they're going to be doing their lower push, 8 reps, upper pull, 8 reps, their motor control drill, 2 on each side. They're going to do that 3 times. So between the learning and the doing, again, like the fatigue can really be adding up here. It's a lot to take in, especially if they're newer and their training age is a lot lower. So oftentimes we will skip the assistance, because now think about, all right, we're going to introduce 2 more exercises. We're going to do multiple rounds of that. Then we're going to go to conditioning. And this person is just like, overwhelmed, potentially feeling silly, and we're cutting into the likelihood that they're going to be consistent with their training because it's just too much. So we will skip this oftentimes and go from our strength straight to our conditioning. So don't take what we're about to look at as this has to be in your programming. This is something that we oftentimes build to with people. So even if we give someone power, strength, and then jump to conditioning, it doesn't mean that that's what they're on for the rest of their life, of their time training with us. It could mean that they have that for the first phase, 2 phases, whatever makes sense, could be even longer than that. And then maybe we add in some assistance training at some point. So assistance training. This is where we're going to build volume. This is where we're going to work on smaller muscle groups, additional lift support the goal. Basically all of the other resistance training that you do with your clients. So what would that be for you? Coffee break. Think about it. What exercises would you give your clients for assistance training? Cheat sheet. You could look at the Strength of Action program, particularly, typically, workout E. Unilateral lifts, things like lunges. Combination lifts, like an RDL, bent over row, which would really mean that we would hinge down into that RDL, do a bent over row. Once our arms are straight again, we would stand back up tall. We're just combining the 2 lifts, hence combination lift. Higher volume bilateral lifts. So as I alluded to earlier, it could be that in workout A, you had, let's say they're newer, they had a goblet squat, and they had their 3 sets of 8 reps. And then in workout B, let's say that their assistance was, it's probably not going to be, but say their assistance was going to be like 12 reps. Maybe they have 2 sets of 12 reps of their goblet squat. Now we're building more volume, we're getting more hypertrophy work in, whatever. Could be the same exact lift. That's not going to be very often that we would do that, but wouldn't necessarily be wrong. And then different planes of motion. Example would be rotational landmine press, where you'd say like, sure, could someone get stronger with that? Yeah, someone could get stronger with just about everything we do in the gym. But if the goal is strength, rotational landmine press is probably not going to be my go-to exercise for that, right? So the NSCA, what I learned in college, didn't necessarily have anything called assistance. I don't know where I got the name assistance, because people are always like, why do you call it that? Why don't you call it, auxiliary lifts or whatever? I don't know, it's just what I call it. Leave me alone. So when I was in college, NSCA, and I'm saying like when I was in college, they still classify the things this way. I don't think they're ever going to change. You have hypertrophy and muscular endurance. So they actually have power. They actually had strength in the textbook. And then instead of assistance, they had hypertrophy and they had muscular endurance. So hypertrophy, 3 to 6 sets of 6 to 12 reps at 67 to 85% of 1 rep max. 67%? Like you're in the lab, you're like, it's got to be the 67, not 66, not 68, but 67. Okay. Muscular endurance, 2 to 3 sets of greater than or equal to 12 reps at less than or equal to 67% 1 rep max. What is this 67? 67? All right. I don't know. I used to do some percentage-based training myself, and I just can't imagine opening up my calculator and being like 67%, whatever. So that's what theirs is. Well, let's look at it. The intent. 3 to 6 sets of 6 to 12 reps at 67 to 85% of 1 rep. 67 to 85% of 1 rep max. Okay, so it's a little bit higher rep, it's a little bit lighter weight, and more sets. Okay, volume for hypertrophy would be the main intent. Applying lots of volume. Muscular endurance, 2 to 3 sets. Okay, less sets for muscular endurance of greater than or equal to 12 reps. Okay, so more reps. It's like the maximum of hypertrophy is the minimum for muscular endurance. All right, got it. At less than or equal to 67% of 1 rep max. Okay, So it's going to be pretty light and lots of volume for muscular endurance. Seems to make sense to me. So how do we apply that in the gym? Well, this one could be all over the place, but how many reps would you program for assistance work? What's the high end? This could get nuts, right? What's the low end? Probably not singles. At what rating of perceived exertion? What RPE? For us, we most commonly use 5 to 20 plus. I wouldn't say it's very often that we go over 20, but sometimes we do, at an RPE of 6 to 8 because intent. So hypertrophy, muscular endurance, strength hypertrophy hybrid, hypertrophy muscular endurance hybrid. These are like, I think back to when I was getting started with all of this, it was like, I don't know if they are as much anymore. I definitely don't look at them, but you used to go to the grocery store. I remember being a kid with my parents going to the grocery store and being like, oh, I'm gonna go to the magazine aisle and look at like the muscle magazines, right? And it was always like commonly accepted that if you were gonna do hypertrophy training, the magazines always had a program that was somewhere between 6 and 12 reps. Muscular endurance, 12 to 20 reps. Strength hypertrophy hybrid, 5 to 10 reps. Hypertrophy muscular endurance hybrid, 8 to 15 reps. And the funny thing is, I still use these ranges all the time for our assistants. I look at our clients, I'm like, all right, hypertrophy, muscular endurance, strength hypertrophy hybrid, hypertrophy, muscular endurance hybrid, what makes sense for them? And that's the range that I'm going to use for them, right? And I go to this all the time. So I guess bro science still kind of for the win here. And this also aligns with what the NSCA teaches. So I don't know, maybe there's something to it. Our assistance is going to go here. It's going to balance out. 9 times out of 10, if you look at workout A, lower push, upper pull, right? For our strength, our assistance is going to be lower pull, upper push. It's going to round out that full body training. And then workout B was lower pull, upper push. Now it's going to be lower push, upper pull to once again round out that full body training. You'll notice there's not typically going to be like motor control work or anything else here. So they'll be back to back. They'll get through this section pretty quick. And depending on what they're doing, sure, maybe they'll take a slight rest. But again, they're kind of always moving at that casual pace. This entire program should take this person less than an hour to get through. All right. And you're probably thinking, all right, here we go. We're on to conditioning. Not yet. Not yet. We're going to talk about that next time. So planning the month when it comes to these rep schemes. So as we saw with the very beginning of this presentation, there was that power, strength, assistance. The very first one was highlighted. So what we do is we organize our reps month to month through non-linear alternating periodization. Now I'm saying that's what we do. Once again, just like all of this, I'm not saying that's what you have to do. There's no rules to what I'm saying here. And the way that it works is you take your typical month-to-month linear approach for your strength work and you flip the middle two numbers. So what I mean is maybe someone was going to do goblet squats, and for a month they were going to do 8 reps, then for a month they were going to do 6 reps, then for a month they were going to do 4 reps, then for a month they were going to do 3 reps, and they were going to keep bumping up the weight on their goblet squat, maybe to the point where they overcome the kettlebell and they need to go to a barbell, right? But that would be your typical linear approach. The weights keep going up, the reps keep coming down. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but what it's really doing is it's taking us with the 8s really at being more volume, which is going to be more mechanical stress, and working our way all the way over to 3s, 4 to 6 months, well, really 3 to 5 months later to start that phase, and being at a lot more neurological intensity as opposed to all the mechanical stress that we have with the 8s. Again, nothing wrong with that, but here's what we do. We take the first number. We still start with that. We simply flip the middle 2. So instead of going 8, 6, 4, 3, we flip the middle 2. Now we go 8, 4, 6, and then we still finish off with the 3 for the exact reason that I just gave. We're going to start with more mechanical stress, right, with the 8s. Then we're going to go a little bit hybrid. We're definitely going to jump to a bit more neurological stress with 4s. Then we're going to go, once again, just back up a little bit, kind of be on that like more neurological, mechanical stress before we go to a much higher neurological stress with number 3. We're just basically never too far away from any one given quality for an extended period of time. We're not working our way from one quality to another. We're kind of teetering back and forth a little bit as we work through this. And we find that it tends to work really well, and it keeps people from just continually putting more and more load on the system, and it helps them being able to show up consistently. Pretty big. If each of those numbers represents a phase of training, typically 4 to 6 weeks. For us, all 4 create a block, 4 to 6 months. So again, that would just be the example of, say that this was strength. We did 8s for a month, 4s for a month, 6s for a month, 3s for a month, okay? We map the plan, we place it at the top of the program, and that was this that you saw to kick off this whole thing. So we're gonna go, say strength was the exact example we just used. So strength went from 8s, the one that's highlighted, the S8. The next program, we're gonna go S4. The third program, we're gonna go S6. Fourth program, S3. Again, the S just means strength. So we had power, we had strength, we had assistance, we had conditioning. That's all it means, is everything under strength for our actual lifts, not our motor control, for our actual lifts is going to be 8s. For power, you can see it went 5 for this first phase, then it's going to go 3, then it's going to go 4, and then it's going to go 2. Now, that's typically, and by typically for us, really always, going to be paired with core. Our core does not always match our power reps. We'll typically look at between power, strength, and assistance, just what makes sense, and we'll 9 times out of 10 pick any one of those for our core repetitions, all based on intent, right? Sometimes it'll even be time-based. It's not even repetition-based at all. But hopefully that makes sense, okay? Only other thing to really notice here is that we went high to low and we flipped the middle 2, but I do want you to notice that assistance goes 6, 10, 8, 12. In other words, it went low to high with the middle 2 flipped. We'll talk about that. And I kind of just laid all this out, right? So once we're done, I don't know how to do this in PowerPoint. I'm pretty good at PowerPoint, but you can see that 5, 8, 6 is highlighted. Here I just made it red because I don't know how to highlight in PowerPoint. For phase 2, we cross that one out, we highlight the next one. Then we cross that one out, highlight the next one. Then we cross that out and we highlight the last one. And then we would have an end of block meeting and we'd be on to block 2. We'll talk more about that later. So planning longer term, rep menus for power, strength, and assistance. So here's what hers looked like, right? She gets through the whole block, we would have an end of block meeting. Again, we're gonna talk in detail about what that means. Then maybe she goes on to something like this. It doesn't mean that we start over again and we do the exact same power, strength, assistance for another 4. We had this end of block meeting, we figure out what she wants to do going forward, and we're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. She has another end of block meeting, we map forward again. I mean, at this point, if let's say each of these she trained 2 days a week, each of these took 6 months, each block took 6 months to go through, we're looking at a year and a half of training here. Another end of block meeting, boom, we'd be into our second year of training, right? So power and strength for us, always highest to lowest, middle 2 flipped. And then as I alluded to earlier, for us, always lowest to highest for assistance, still with middle 2 flipped. Why do you think that is? Think about it for a second while I drink my coffee. All right, I'll tell you. So it really is about, again, mitigating stressors and spreading them across the week. So for the same reason that I talked about, if we start with 8, we don't go 6, 4, 3 and take a total linear approach on our strength, because we'd be getting too far away from any one quality at a time. We also flip our strength and our assistance. So you can see that when our strength, looking at block 1, the 4th phase where it's power 2, strength 3, assistance 12, when our strength work is the most neurological stress with only 3 reps, our assistance work is at the highest number of reps, more mechanical stress with 12s. So we're always spreading those stressors out, if that makes sense. We're never too far away from any given quality at a time. And even on the day, we're always balancing things out, getting full body and also kind of covering that full spectrum. And we've found that with general population people, excuse me, this tends to work really, really well. This isn't me sitting here saying this is what I would do with athletes and everyone else necessarily. But we find that it works really, really well with our general population and even our military law enforcement type people that we work with. Okay? So that's that. Super duper efficiency tip. Everything I just laid out really is our most commonly used rep schemes, but I want you to do yours because maybe you train a different population than us, or maybe you have a slightly different thought process than us. That's cool. Or a very different thought process than us. That's fine. But still, what are the things that as you're looking at this, you're thinking, oh yeah, like we could definitely implement that? Maybe it's this. Write down your most common rep schemes that you use and go to them. Instead of sitting down, if you've ever sat in front of the computer and been like, oh my God, what do I want to give this person? All right, we did 12 reps. Like, what makes sense to go to from here? Well, the problem is that you're probably thinking of one program at a time and you're not thinking of mapping out the bigger picture based on this person's goals. Once you do that, you can say, okay, Is this person after like a pure strength, for their strength work? Does it make sense to go like lower on pure strength? Do we want, even on our strength work, more of like a strength hypertrophy hybrid? Are they learning and they need enough volume to be able to get practice in to get better, but yet not so much volume that it's going to crush them, right? All of these things come into play, and we make choices, and we likely, I know we do, I'm saying for you, likely already have common repetition schemes that you use for different types of people. So you might as well write them down and go to them and not overthink this stuff whenever you get to it. And then the cool thing is, there's nothing that's set in stone. Even though it's in ink at the top of the paper saying, hey, this is where we're planning on going next, there are occasional times where we get there and I'm like, oh, hell no, that person's not going to 3 reps. It's just they're not ready for that. So maybe we call an audible and we decide to bump back up in reps. Whatever, that's fine. But whenever we pre-map our plan in terms of repetitions at the top of the program, it just makes it easier whenever we sit down to write the next phase. Okay, so we map it up there, and that's all the further we've gotten on this program so far. We got a while to go. No, honestly, I think that's probably the hardest part for a lot of people, is making these decisions on repetitions. So, all right, maybe you're sitting here thinking this all makes sense, but how many sets do we do? Cool. Well, how much time do you have? And what makes sense for your clients' goals? Let's talk about it. Every time people walk into our gym, there's a gigantic banner. I don't know how big this thing is, maybe 6 feet tall, right in their face, direct line of sight when they walk in the door. And it says, what's your goal today? That's why you're here. Well, our coaches, part of our process, and I think Todd will get into some of this with coaching, is to draw goals out of people on a varying time basis. So obviously, like when someone sits down with me for their initial goal setting session, I'm going to get that big overarching goal. Then we're going to narrow that down to what they'd like to accomplish in their first 4 to 6 weeks, their first program. Really, actually, their first 4 to 6 months, their first block. Then their first 4 to 6 weeks, their first program. And that's a skill. Not everyone's ready to do that from day one. Then when they come in and they see our coaches are going to work with them on like, all right, what are we trying to get done today? And in the beginning, they might be like, I'm just trying to learn the ropes. Cool, it's a great goal. But once they start to get context and understanding what goes on in our gym, they can start to set bigger and bigger goals, or maybe bigger isn't the right word, maybe more finite goals within the day. And our coaches can help with that. And if there's one thing that I think all of us can take away from CrossFit, that CrossFit does really, really well, is they've taken what's, the typical thing in training is you have this big goal that's probably a year plus away, and they kind of get rid of that. And CrossFit has made the day the goal to, get a killer time on whatever the person's name of the workout of the day is, or to beat your friend, or survive the workout. And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with those things, but they created this cult-like following because they help people to find success on the day. And I'm here to tell you that we can do the same thing in a little bit more of a sane and sensible approach. And here's how we do it. So each of our weeks is going to have, wait for it, and then 10. So as we're looking at this program, I'm going to go back out so you can see a little bit. We've got the exercise names off to the far left. We're going to start off looking at workout A, and then we've got the different weeks. So blue, pink, green, and purple. Okay, so you'll see as I split this out, we're going to look at the blue column week 1 next to the exercises. All right, so week 1, which this is someone trains 3 days a week, this genuinely is going to be a week. Again, not to be redundant, but if someone trains 2 days a week, this is going to be 6 weeks, right? Or, I'm sorry, this is going to be a week and a half, right? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're still going to call it their base week. And what's really going on here is that they have a new program. They're brand new to training, or they've been training with us for a while, and this is their next phase, like you experience in Strength Faction. We still call it base week because you probably have some new exercises. We're not trying to necessarily change and reinvent the wheel with every single exercise, but we've probably introduced some new exercises. And I can pretty much guarantee you that we've put in different repetitions and oftentimes even a different number of sets. So we've got to set a baseline. That's all this first week is really about. We're not thinking about crushing ourselves with training and going balls to the wall. If it's a second program, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, this is almost like a built-in deload from the week before. We're going to learn some new stuff. We're not trying to set any world records here. We're just kind of learning the program and going on. So you'll see that our power is 2 to 3 rounds, our strength is 3 rounds, our assistance is 2 rounds, and our conditioning is 3 to 5. Then, when we get into week 2, we call it our train week. So if we've done things right during base week, not only did we kind of feel things out, we wrote down the weights that we landed on. So to take it a little bit further, goblet squat, 3 sets of 8, RPE 7. We really are just trying to find out today, in the given state that we're in, what an RPE 7 is for our goblet squat. That's the baseline that we're setting. We've written that down. Now, that's not a static number. That can change set to set. People could go heavier every single set and be like, oh, boom, there it is. Or with fatigue, it might mean they need to come back down. Whatever, right? Then when we get to our train week, we're training off of the numbers that we set in our baseline. Now we got to take readiness into account. So this is the whole, like, what's your goal today? Well, my goal last week, I know that I have goblet squat again, 3 sets of 8. Last week I got, the 20 kilo kettlebell. Felt pretty good. I'm really hoping I can get the 24 today and pass the strength standard. Okay, awesome. That's our goal, right? So we're training off of the numbers that we had before, but there's a readiness component to that. How was your sleep? How's your nutrition? Are you stressed today? Are you sore, fatigued, whatever? There might be some reasons why that might not go as well, and we can look at if we need to adjust our efforts at all in the day. But regardless, we're training off of the numbers that we set in week 1, our base week. So base, train, then we're into week 3, PR and go home. Oh, the one thing I left out is that our sets, our reps, and our RPE 9 times out of 10 are going to be identical in base and train week. Okay, so we're not really going to change other variables. We're just going to try and push the weights a little bit more. Then we get to week 3, and I want you to notice something. In base and train week, we had 2 to 3 rounds of our power. We had 3 rounds of our strength. We had 2 and then 3 to 5. Check this out. We go 1 to 2 rounds of our power. We go from 3 rounds on our strength to 2. We stuck with 2 on our assistance. And then we actually bumped up a little bit on our conditioning. So what's going on here? Well, we're thinking of our power training as just quick, excitation of our CNS, just getting our nervous system prepped for the strength work that's to come. And then we only have 2 rounds of our strength. What's up with that? Well, this week's called PR and go home. And it's inspired by the philosophy of Dan John of set a PR and get out of the gym. Now, again, this is for general population people. We're not necessarily, well, in the beginning, we probably are setting a lifetime PR because everything's a lifetime PR. But it really, as they get more training experience with us, it really just means their goal is to set a program PR for that day, right? So doesn't mean that they just have those 2 sets. It means they're still going to have warm-up sets and everything, but they're going to have 2 sets where they're going to get after it. Normally, the RPE would have also jumped, but keep in mind we're working off Karen's program, and she has MS, and this was her very first program with us, and we weren't trying to overload her. So know that this one might not be the best example for that reason. Normally, if it was RPE 7 in weeks 1 and week 2, it would probably go to RPE 8 in week 3, but in this one, it didn't for that reason. So it went a little bit lower volume for our power, a little bit lower volume, higher intensity for our strength. We kept our assistance the same, and then we bumped up our conditioning just a little bit, right? And we'll talk more about conditioning coming up. And then we get into our reach week. So whereas, let's just look at strength, it was 3 rounds in weeks 1 and 2 in base and train. It's 2 rounds in PR and go home, week 3. In week 4, 4 rounds. So now the volume jumps up. We call it a reach week. And this is inspired by the man pictured here, Joe Ken. And we don't use all of his systems, but we did take this from him. And there's a really, really good NSCA presentation that he did years ago called, I think, Macros, Micros, Mesos. I'll link it up. And it's phenomenal in terms of his description of how he sets up volume with all of these different teams that he's worked with over the years and why. And I heard him say it, I'm like, man, that still kind of lines up for general population. And if you think about a traditional strength conditioning program, it's like the base week is kind of the same. There's that train week, kind of the same for most people. And then a lot of programs, especially like powerlifting and things like that, they would go to that reach week where the volume goes way up through the roof and you're really getting after it. And then in week 4, they deload, right? And then a new phase starts. But he was like, man, my athletes don't really need a deload every fourth week like that. Um, so instead, and he used the PR and go home to an extent, we use it a little bit differently. So instead, what he does is he'll drop the weight in week 4 and he'll up the volume and he'll almost like conditioning with weights. And while our application is not always identical to that, we have that PR and go home, really hit it hard in week 3, but we don't do as much total work, so we're not crushing people. Then when they come in week 4, reach week, their volume is through the roof, and now with the context of what they've accomplished for the month, we can set some different goals. Hey, maybe you realized in PR and go home week that you're stronger than you thought you were. You're new to training, right? And you're going to try and take the weight that you hit at your top end and get it for all your sets in week 4, in reach week, and still get in and out of the gym in the same amount of time. Or maybe you're deciding to drop your weights back to what you used in the train week. And again, you want to get all of your sets in, get in and out of the gym in the same amount of time. The key is that all of these different weeks are going to take about the same amount of time if we're approaching things correctly. It's not to say that this program is going to drag on for an hour and a half. We're going to move a little quicker. We're going to rest a little less. And that means that for some people, we're going to use a little bit lighter weights. We're really going to push the pace this week. So it keeps, even though we're doing the same exercises for the same number of repetitions, by messing with the volume in terms of the number of sets and RPE, it keeps things interesting. It gives us different goals for the day. Again, what's your goal today? This is one way that someone could approach their goals for the day, and it keeps people enticed, I guess is the word that I'll use. All right, so we're going to leave it there for today, but I know that may leave some of you guys with questions. So if you have questions, make sure that you're getting on the coaching call. And if you can't make the coaching call, but you want us to talk about things, there's a few other options. Remember that you can always schedule a call with your mentor. You can post your questions in the Facebook group, and we'll make sure that we get you taken care of. All right? So that does it for this one, and we will talk to you guys soon. See ya.